You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And it's brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Duroplus, producers of quality PVC and HDPE pipes and water tank. Where Duroplus goes, you know, water flows. DBS Industries, roofing, Papa Fee. My Way, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Cherry Properties, Cherry Tree Properties. We develop spaces as though we were going to occupy them ourselves. Syntex tanks, it's strong, it's tough, and Flamingo paints, simply superior. Thank you very much for joining us. And I do not have a take for you. Actually, I had been planning my take around the issue that we are going to discuss today. So I shelve my take, except to say that on the Bugri Nabu matter that has come up, where the IGP allegedly there's been a plot or some conspiracy to oust the IGP, the people that are suspected to have leaked that particular tape, we understand, allegedly have been arrested by the NIB, the Bureau of Investigation, National Investigations Bureau. I just have a simple question to ask them. You can deem them as whistleblowers, not so? What do you do with whistleblowers? Do you arrest them and deal with them harshly, or you collaborate with them so that you can get to the bottom of things and fight wrong in society? Why are those people arrested if it is the case that the suspicion is that they have been linked to being those who recorded the tape or released the tape into the public? First, what's the offense for doing such a recording or leaking such a recording? Article 18 of the Constitution is very clear. You cannot record people, interfere with people's private conversations and their property and their communication. But if it has to do with crime, if it has to do with the morality of the country, if it has to do with health that is being compromised, you have every right to blow the whistle on the evildoers of this country. So why is it that the voices that have been heard of people that we know, that you in the security more importantly know, and some have come out already to admit that they were part of the conversations, why is it that those people are not the ones we have heard have been arrested, are being dealt with, but those potentially who may have leaked or may have recorded it and commit no offense whatsoever? We ought to be careful in this country. And I call on all of us to be sure that we are participating actively in the system. Otherwise, if we don't, we'll make a big mistake. As Samuel Kudje told the senior citizen says in chapter 13 of his book, which is page 58, he says, I now hold the view that non-involvement in the political process is a disservice to one's country. The RTI Commission on Thursday did introduce certain things, and the minister, encouraged them to help citizens to blow the whistle and make sure that wrong is not encouraged in this country. My guest this morning, Mary Awalana Ada, who is acting executive director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative, that is an international watchdog local chapter, Transparency International's local chapter, GII. Dr. Theo Echampong is economist and risk analyst. Kujua Piaget Tua is associate professor of law, University of Ghana, Legon. Samuel Nete George is MP Ningo Prampram, Deputy Ranking Member, Communications Committee of Parliament and Member, Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. We extended an invitation to the New Patriotic Party, of course, because one of the issues also has to do directly with the party. But as at this minute, there is no representation. Let's hope that there will be some representation. It does appear that the first issue does not encourage them. But we'll have a discussion. Welcome. Good morning and welcome to all of you, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Great.
Morning.
Right. Okay, so let's go straight to the matter of Cecilia Dapaa, Dapaa, shall we? Some of these documents, often they are put in court and the names are obscured. Because if you look at the charge sheet and the statement accompanying the charge sheet, there is no reference to the person here, the complainant here, being a minister or anything like that. So sometimes these things can be in court for a while and nobody discovers that they are prominent people. But this time round, this is what we have in our faces. So I have the charge sheet from the Circuit Court of Ghana here in Accra. Is the Republic versus Patient Botwe, Sarai J, Benjamin Sowa, Kweku Botwe, and Malik Dauda. And there is a count 1, which is conspiracy to commit crime, to wit stealing, contrary to sections so and so of the law. I don't waste your time. Particulars of offense. That Patient Botwe, who is 18 years, a hairdresser. Sarai J, who is 30 years, unemployed, between the period of July and October 2022 at Abelenkpe in the Greater Accra region and within the jurisdiction of the court, did agree or acted together with common purpose to commit a crime, which is stealing. Count 2, that these two people within the same period also did dishonestly appropriate cash, the sum of $1 million, the property of Cecilia Dapaa. Please note that already there's some very lame defenses out there that say it's not her money, it's her husband's money. Go and check the charge sheet if you are not reading. Then count number 3 mentions the same lady and then the two ladies again and says they dishonestly appropriated the cash sum of 300,000 euros, the property of Cecilia Dapaa. Check that again, her husband is not there. Then count 4, they mention them again and they say that they dishonestly appropriated the cash sum, all of that cash, 350,000 Ghana cedis, being the property of Cecilia Dapaa. Once again, count 5. Now it's Botwe, the hairdresser, Patient Botwe, the hairdresser, and again. And it says that they once again did dishonestly appropriate assorted clothes valued 95,000 Ghana cedis, assorted handbags valued $35,000, and assorted perfumes valued $1,400. The property of Cecilia Dapaa. Then count 6. It's important that we do this before we start the discussion, that these two dishonestly appropriated assorted jewelries valued at $95,000, the property of Cecilia Dapaa. Then count 7, that they dishonestly appropriated 6 pieces of assorted kente cloth valued at 90,000 Ghana cedis and 6 sets of men's suits valued at $3,000, the property of Daniel Osei Kufuor. So this is where you hear Daniel Osei Kufuor, kente cloth, and what's it again? Suits. Then count 9. Okay, so yes, count 8. Count 8. That they dishonestly, a plumber, this time it's a plumber, the Benjamin Sowa, dishonestly received 180,000 Ghana cedis, the property of Cecilia Dapaa. Once again, check that, which he knew to have been obtained by means of crime. So please don't accept, something that is stolen. It's wrong. It's also criminal when you do that. Then Kweku Botwe, 65 years. Benjamin Sowa is 29 years. Kweku Botwe, he dishonestly received 50,000 Ghana cedis. He said to be the father of the house help. The property of Cecilia Dapaa, which he knew to have been obtained by means of crime. If your girl of 18 years brings you 50,000 Ghana cedis, you should ask her where she got that money. Okay? Count 10. Malik Dauda. Social media is having fun with that. 34 years unemployed. That he did dishonestly receive 100,000 Ghana cedis, the property of Cecilia Dapaa, which he knew was obtained by means of crime. So you hear about money being given to a boyfriend and so on. And people are saying, well, exes can also enjoy. Now, I'll do this, then we start the discussion. This is called the brief facts of the case. Complainants in this case are Daniel Osei-Kufuor and his wife, Cecilia Dapaa, who reside at Abelempe, Accra. First accused, Patience Botwe Mabna, was a house help to the complainants. Second accused, Sarah Ejay, is unemployed, a former house help. Proper collaboration, a former house help to the complainants. Third accused, Benjamin Sowa, is a boyfriend. Okay, so Benjamin, he's the guy. I almost forgot. He got actually a lot of money than Malik got. Third accused is a boyfriend to Patience. Fourth accused, Kweku Botwe, is Patience's dad. Fifth accused, Malik Dauda, is a former boyfriend, he's the former boyfriend. You see, boyfriend and former boyfriend. Sometime in June 2023, the complainants reported a theft of cash and some personal effects as indicated on the face of the charge sheet. Prior to that, Patience, who was a house help to the complainants, was caught to have opened and entered the bedroom of the complainants with a duplicate key. She went and made that by herself, a duplicate key. Upon intelligence, Patience and the other person were arrested at their hideout her boyfriend were arrested at their hideout in Tamale in the northern region. A search conducted in their room revealed $40,000 and 72,619 cedis, 70 pesos. Police investigation revealed that sometime in October 2022, keep that in mind, complainant Daniel Osei-Kufuor returned from town to observe that their bedroom, which was locked and had been opened, and heard an unusual noise therein. He entered the room and found Patience hiding behind the door. Subsequently, the complainants detected theft of properties indicated on the face of the charge sheet. Further investigations revealed that house help used part of the stolen money to buy a 3-bedroom house at Amrahia at a cost of $70,000. Okay, good life. The following brand new items, quote that, brand new items, which the house help used some of the stolen money to buy, were also retrieved from the said house. She bought a fresh house, or she bought a house, $70,000, and then used quite a bit of the money to furnish it. 1 double-decker refrigerator, 1 television set, 1 washing machine, 1 chest freezer, 1 gas cooker, 1 water dispenser, and related items. She doesn't want to drink sachet water anymore. She has a water dispenser. So she and her boyfriend, you see them, they are used as A1, A3. I'm just making sense for you. She and her boyfriend also indicated that they used some of the stolen money to buy Hyundai Elantra with registration number GE 977123 at a cost of 80,000 Ghana cedis. She also gave 180,000 Ghana cedis to her boyfriend, who used same to purchase an unregistered Honda Civic car with DV plate number 490323, which same have been retrieved. So they have retrieved this. Investigation also disclosed that Patience and her boyfriend used parts of the stolen money to rent a 3-bedroom apartment at Tamale at a total cost of 105,600 cedis. But they bought a house in Amrahia. They finished it. Why do they need to rent a house? Okay, so they rented a house for a period of 2 years. Additionally, she and her boyfriend used part of the stolen money. They have a lot to spend. I'm tired reading. She used part of the stolen money to rent a storeroom at Tamale at a total cost of 120,000 Ghana cedis. So Patience, according to the investigators, has admitted the offense and mentioned her accomplice, that is the former house help, to the effect that when they were working in the complainant's house, she used to keep watch of the main gates for the former house help to go into the complainant's room to steal their money, after which they share the spoil. So they've been doing it for a long time. Then the former house help was subsequently arrested from her hideout in Budumburam, a suburb of Kasua, for investigation. Investigations further disclosed that this former house help used part of the stolen money to build a 3-bedroom self-contained house at Budumburam. Patience also gave 50,000 Ghana cedis out of the stolen money to her dad. Your dad, you give her only 50. And your boyfriend, how much? Ex-boyfriend, how much? Who admitted the preceding fact during investigation. So the dad has also admitted the crime, admitted receiving the money. The former house help also gave 100,000 Ghana cedis out of the stolen money to A5. That will be Malik, who also admitted the same. The case is still under investigation, and they brought it before the court, arraigned the people, seeking that trial will commence to retrieve all these monies. So let me begin with Professor Kwadwo Appiagyei Etua. You are the lawyer. How do you see what is going on the face of the charge sheet and the brief facts of the case?
Thank you for having me. I think this is scandalous, and anyone who hears such news would certainly be worried about how far or the extent to which developments in the political arena, touching on corruption, touching on money laundering, touching on other issues that touch the very heart of our political dispensation, we will see it, because it's a very big amount of money. And considering the fact that we are going to the IMF for loans and so on, the question is, how do we account for this development? But in any case, it seems to be part of our political practice in the country. Maybe the politicians will deal with that. But for me, in terms of the law, I think the question then is, how do we make sure that this matter doesn't rest where it is? Because we have offices like the Office of the Special Prosecutor. As you rightly said, he can immediately take up the matter based on the powers that he has on his own. SHRAJ cannot. And we also need to look at the Access Declaration regime, its effectiveness in dealing with such matters. We need to look at the Office of the DOCO, Office of the Economic and Organized Crime Office, and whether it also has the power to do so, and whether it has a muscle to do so. So in terms of the law, I think these are the areas that immediately come to mind. And the question is whether we can use law to deal with the matter, or there has to be some other means to tackle the issue. So that would be my initial comments. Thank you.
All right, I'll return to you. So the question will be, why should somebody who has money kept in her room, why should the person be investigated? Because the person's money is lost and has been stolen and she's seeking to retrieve it. Maybe say something briefly about that. Why?
Well, as for money, you have the right to keep your money where you want it to be. And everybody also has a right to property. So what you have worked for and what you have earned is entirely yours, except those that you have to pay as tax. But in this situation, that is why, for example, the Access Declaration regime would be helpful, because you can easily refer to what she deposited when she was appointed as a minister, the records that indicate that she has so much assets, and then you compare that to the amount of money that she has been receiving as a minister or as a member of parliament or as both. And then you can easily draw the line and do the deductions and conclude that so much money could not have been acquired through legitimate means. Of course, the law also talks about gifts and so on. So you need to look at all of that. And then you conclude if the money, the excess that is not accounted for can be legitimate money, or whether it came in through illicit means, which therefore suggests money laundering issues, brings that issue into the picture. And so keeping money in your home is not wrong, but what money is it? And what is the money being used for? Because according to the facts, the money has been there for some time, and the people have been siphoning it off. And they thought that they had also hit a jackpot, so they continued to do that. And they couldn't even recognize that the money was being siphoned off. And so that tells you that there is more to it than meets the eye.
Okay. What will be your preliminary comments, Sam George? As a member of parliament, the NDC caucus yesterday already raised issues. We'll go into all of that. The minority leader said this must be dealt with speedily. The NDC members also spoke to the press and said she should actually be sacked immediately, if not interdicted at least. John Mahama also tweeted saying that this is scandalous.
Well, very good morning to you and my co-panelist and the good people of Ningo Pram and our viewers. It's a sad day for us. It's a sad spectacle. This is how low we've sunken as a country. The issues at hand are mind-boggling. I mean, since the matter broke yesterday, I've been trying to process and appreciate the gravity and enormity of the matter. But I think that the first thing I'll say on this is that this case clearly distinguishes, for those who have the erroneous belief that the NDC and the NPP are one, and they say, oh, NDC and NPP are the same. This is a fantastic classic case that establishes the difference between the two parties. And I remember very well, because I was part of government at the time, when in 2013, early 2013, early 2014, a videotape emerged of a private recording, and I'm saying this on the back of your earlier tape.
That's right.
A recording that was done of a private conversation without the consent of the person, where in her car, where there was an allusion to a dream of getting $1 million. It was a dream. Call it the Ghanaian dream, whatever dream, a dream. The Mahama administration of the day in 48 hours, sacked Victoria Hammer. In 48 hours, she was sacked. Now we've crossed 24 hours since the story broke. This is not a recording. This is not a dream. This is someone leaving the reality and living a bigger dream, actually. Because I keep saying to people that $1 million per the charge sheet belonging to the Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources, Honorable Cecilia Dapaa, is missing from her residence. It took her husband chancing on the person in the act to notice that $1 million was missing. It then presupposes that the stash of cash there is way in excess of $1 million. Because even if it was $2 million and half of a stash of money is missing, it will be obvious to the naked eye. For it to be so inconsequential that you couldn't notice its absence until you stumbled on the person should give us a bigger worry as a nation. How much was stashed in that home? And then begin to ask ourselves, and I agree with Professor Appiah-Jaitua that there's no crime in keeping your money under your bed in a bank, digging a hole and putting it. It's your personal choice. There is no legislation that says all monies must be deposited in the bank. So on that one, it's fine if she kept her money.
At least in Ghana, elsewhere,
yes,
you cannot.
But in Ghana, there's no law like that. So I wouldn't say that she's breaking any law by keeping money in her house. But the question I would then ask is, if $1 million is so inconsequential, I'm looking at the quantum of my mind's eye is envisaging how much money was stashed there. How then did you come by that money? Is it legitimate money? If it is legitimate money, we can simply establish that by you showing us the trail of work done to inherit or earn that money. And then if it is inheritance or earned, we must see the commensurate tax that has been paid to the GRA on that matter. And that will settle this matter. But if you are unable to show us any legitimate business that paid that money, and again, the question you ask yourself is, for that volume of money, which legitimate business will pay you in cash? Or were you paid by bank wire and you went to the bank and asked the bank to withdraw it and bring it to your house? If that was the case, you must tell us which bank. The bank must confirm that they indeed did a cash out of that amount and delivered. And then we begin to ask ourselves, we have the central bank regime, where even when you want to withdraw $10,000 from a bank in Ghana, you can't go beyond that in a year. So on what basis then?
And you suggested if it was money paid to her, like bulk,
yes,
one installment, that amount,
yes,
the FIC, the Financial Intelligence,
absolutely should have been triggered.
Look, I had to fight for a client. It was just $50,000 that was sent into his account.
Yes.
Somebody in the bank saw it. They said, we check your accounts, not this much. Immediately they triggered FIC. The money got frozen. Now we have to go to court and fight and explain why the money belongs to the person.
50,000 cedis.
Right.
That is literally
$50,000.
$50,000, yeah. Sorry. So that is literally 1/20th of the amount we're talking about here.
So okay, if it went through that, then it must be legitimate because they would have gone through those processes.
The FIC will have to establish, and like I said, we're talking of $1 million, which is the insignificant portion that was stolen. So the full stash is what we must begin to investigate and understand. And for me, I think that if Honorable Cecilia Dapaa was minded by the title she bears, Honorable, and this is someone I know personally, but I mean, she should have resigned. She shouldn't even wait to be sacked. She should have resigned.
She's issued a statement.
And you see that statement?
She's issued a statement.
Okay.
It doesn't matter that the Cecilia spelling
because I was coming to
at the beginning has CECE, but we are informed that she admits that this is her statement. And the statement is dated the 21st of July, 2023. statement from Cecilia Dapaa. I refer to publications dated 21/07/2023, suggesting that I own $1 million, 300,000 euros, and millions of CDs, which have been stolen from my house. There are noticeable inconsistencies between what is being discussed in the public domain and the thrust of the original complaint on the matter. I am taking steps to examine the origins of the inconsistencies and will provide a detailed response in the coming days. Signed, name correctly spelled, Cecilia Dapaa. Okay, so she doesn't say this is untrue. Of course, she cannot say this is untrue, but she says there are noticeable inconsistencies, and as far as the original complaint is concerned, and she's taking steps to resolve that.
So you see,
maybe the investigators put $1 million when she meant for them to put $100,000.
For want, this case has been in court for a while. It's not just today it started. And the investigations have been going on since sometime last year, 2022. For want of the confidentiality of private conversation, I would not mention who. But yesterday, in Parliament, after this matter broke, a senior member of government and a senior MPP person made it clear to us that they were going to engage in a PR spin and get the charge sheet amended.
I think the charge sheet has actually been amended, but I haven't seen the amended charge
Exactly.
sheet.
So, and the attempt to amend it is because of the gravity of the theft, to try and drop down the numbers. So Ghanaians should watch out for that. You soon see a new charge sheet that have dropped a number of zeros out of the figures in question. But look, you can't tell us that it is only after this has become public knowledge that you are now realizing that the amounts were not what it was, or are false, or are a misrepresentation. It just shocks me, that we have a minister of state. This is our Bola minister, for want of a better phrase. This is our Bola minister. Our Bola minister has $1 million plus in her home, 300,000 euros, and millions of Ghana cedis sitting in her home. And you have your information minister telling you, go and sell your dollars, stop hoarding your dollars. So it means that the members of the Akufo-Addo government clearly are not listening, they're not walking their talk. They have a different narrative for us as Ghanaians, and there's a different narrative for those of them in government. Look, and at times the truth is in the detail, the devil is in the detail. If you really pay attention, Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo told us, "Osi yeti sikaso, then so come the one more sikaso, come the meneo." You understand me? This is the reality. They turn around and blame the NDC. In fact, me, Sam George, I have been blamed by MPP government for the fall in the city. Do you remember that story? Where they said my anti-LGBTQ bill had affected the performance of the dollar. Meanwhile, they are storing the dollar in their homes.
I'll return to you. This was supposed to be your preliminary comment.
Prelim, okay,
I think the amended charge sheet will be dated the 20th of June. Will be dated the 20th of June, I think. But as far as what I see in a portion of it, I don't have the full picture of it. The $1 million remains unchanged on that amended charge sheet, which the date I see is on the 20th of July, not June, 20th of July. All right, so even if it's amended, the 1 million is there, and then the 300 euros is also there as well.
There'll be an amendment of the amendment. You wait.
Okay. All right. Let's see how that goes. Yes, Mary, from where you sit at GII, and this will be the first time we're speaking to you since you assumed the topmost office in that place. So congratulations. What have you been thinking since yesterday when you became aware of this?
Thank you very much, Samson. Good morning to you and good morning to the team. This is an unfortunate situation. It is shocking. It is seriously sad that at a time when this country is struggling to revive from the disastrous consequences of the a near economic failure, which has been attributed to many factors, but not the inefficiencies we have been grappling with, which we believe are the bane of our suffering. We encountered this challenge today. It is a big blot in the fight against corruption for us. The implications are so disastrous, and we say so because if we are saying that, and the two speakers have eloquently spoken to this, that someone is keeping such huge sums of money in their homes, and these monies are personal. And as you correctly indicated from the charge sheet, if you read, I think it is only on the 7th that is mentioned about $3,000 or so belonging to the husband. The rest of the properties which have been cited are said to belong to the Honorable Minister of State. This is sad, particularly because we are speaking of a situation where this government has been the proponent of digitalization, has been the proponent of formalizing the economy, of ensuring that money is not out there to promote too much spending and its economic implications in the fiscal space. One of them being the inflation, which is so huge, we are all affected by. And so for me, to think that one human being could keep such money in the house, then where is this drive towards the digitization we are talking about? And I bring in one of the critical elements of the banking crisis. It is this same government under which she serves that decided that some banks were not doing well and they went down. So it is this same government which has embarked on a DDE which is discouraging Ghanaians from banking or putting their monies into investment. So if a leading member of this same government is keeping $1 million in her house, and as eloquently spoken to by Prof. and Sam George, this was not even noticed. So meaning there is a lot more cash where it came from. And for these households to be aware of that means they had seen, or they have, through their cleaning, they have seen that this is so much. If they pick some, nobody would notice. And so they continue to indulge. And now some of them have made themselves so rich. And that is not to say that stealing is good. But unfortunately, this household saw an opportunity where there was so much, they thought they could also indulge and then get away with it. And they did, until a stroke of luck on behalf of the minister's husband ensured that they were caught. But critically, we are saying that in our space, this should be seriously attended to. And if you look at our asset declaration, I think it is a beginning point where we can then be talking about whether these monies were genuinely acquired. If they are acquired, they should be in within the purview of Act 550, which speaks to the declaration of assets and liabilities. So it is for us to ask the president, the appointing authority, to do the right thing. Because it has been so disappointing in the past that wherever we have asked, when issues of corruption have come up, we have not seen much action being taken. It is not enough to say you are providing agencies which are fighting corruption with resources, but then the political will to act on instances such as these are not taken seriously. It is not enough for the president to continue to tell us that state institutions are acting while behind the scene strings are being pulled to frustrate processes from occurring. We believe that for the president to redeem his image and then also take off that mantra that has been applied to him for some time now, that he is a clearing agent, we believe this is a time for him to act and act swiftly.
Okay.
Ask this minister to step aside and let the agencies of state take this thing up. I believe the OSP has shown in times past that he can do this and he will do it very well if allowed. And so the president should let this woman step aside immediately. Then it gives opportunity to do a thorough investigation on this. If she is not sacked, let her be interdicted. I say if she's not sacked because she took this issue to court. And so perhaps she would also be countering. You are lawyers, she would say that if it was stolen wealth, she may not have gone to court to seek that justice is done for her. But we are saying that for a public officer,
doesn't that suggest to you that to be bold to put this in court suggests that the money may be clean, and so you may have to maybe be hesitant in rushing to pronounce, as it were, judgment that it is stolen money. Of course, it is stolen money to the extent that those who have been put in court stole it. But to her, it's her money. And I was saying that, don't you think that we may be a bit running ahead of ourselves, because we know that politicians and keeping huge sums of money in their homes, in their boots, and so on, is not a new phenomenon. And I will, in the course of this discussion, I'd like us to go to that extent to check a number of things. That's why I brought these books in the studio here. So shouldn't we be a little, cautious? If somebody can go to court, knowing that the court is not a private place, it's a public place, and that this thing will become public if I go to court, unless you are sure that this is clean money, will you dare do that?
Samson, I remember when you started this in your introduction, you mentioned clearly that when these issues are taken to court, because the person's names are mentioned, and for me, there are a lot of people called Awelana and a lot of people called Mary. And so many of us would not even adduce our minds to some of these. And so that is one of the areas that we could be thinking about. And that's why I concede that perhaps she thought she had a case and so she could take it to court. But for us, the critical element in this discussion is that a public officer who is paid a certain amount, which is public information, is able to amass such huge sums of money that is stashed in her home, and there is no trail. That is the critical issue we should be talking about. No trail of this money from anywhere. We know what
we haven't gotten there yet, have we?
Exactly. There is no, how can anybody? I remember there was a time somebody sent some money through a family, and this was also frozen until it was proven, and that was just $10,000 because the person had not seen such money, small money. So for 300,000 euros and then 1 million, and we continue to say that it is not just 1 million, because if the 1 million is taken away and it's not, people do not notice it, it means it is so huge that the person maybe.
So you hold on there. I'll return to you. But when you're looking at scenarios, you could look at two ways. Like you have just said, and some judge said earlier, it is possible that this was some sort of, I don't know what it would have been in, what they would have been putting the money in. It could be that they were dumping the money in there, or she was dumping money in there all the time, so she doesn't get to check to know how much exactly, is being taken out. It is also possible that this was that figure put aside, and because some of it has been stolen, then she gets to know that the exact amount I put there for a certain purpose later has been stolen. Dr. Tio Champong, yes, I'll return to you, Mary. I'll return to you, Mary. Dr. Tio Champong, thank you very much for also joining us. From where you sit and how you analyze things, your first impressions, and what are your expectations? I read a portion of the amended charge sheet earlier, and I said the date is actually the 5th of July. And the amended charge sheet, nothing changes except the amount given to the ex-boyfriend. Nothing changes. So the contents remain almost the same, except the boyfriend's figure that has changed. Yes, Dr. Chiachampo.
Samson, good morning. Again, pleasure to be here. You know, the first thing that came to me when I saw this news yesterday, I just shouted and I said, hey, is she running a savings and loans company in her house? Because, I mean, it's not a small amount of money. $1 million, assuming it was even $100 bills, normally would fit into the suitcase, like a small suitcase that people tend to travel with. Again, $1 million, just for the purposes of our listeners. Today, the exchange rate is like 11.5, right? So that's 11 million Ghana cedis, or 11.5 million Ghana cedis. To build a 6-unit classroom block in Ghana would cost you roughly about 800 or so thousand. So that $1 million, or 11.5 million, can build about 14 6-unit classroom blocks, just for people to appreciate, you know, the amounts that we're talking about, you know, in question here. But there are 2 or 3 issues within, some of which our other panelists have spoken about. The first thing is, for me, it comes to me across as though she wasn't even aware that these monies had been stolen or taken from her until the point that the husband discovered that something untoward.
That's a fact.
So the question then is, how much more money was actually in the house that we don't know, right? And number 2, by the time you become a minister, or at the time you're becoming a minister, you declare your assets, you declare your liabilities, we know all of that. So are we in a position to establish that these monies, because on the charge sheet that you read, almost 9 out of the 10 or so charges, so probably about 7, directly says that this is quote unquote the property of Cecilia Dapaa, right?
In fact, it is only count 6, which is the value of the kente and suits that belong to the husband.
Yes. So then, since she became a minister, we know how much ministers earn in this country. We know what they are paid every month. We should be in a position to then establish whether these monies, which she says were her property, was actually earned legitimately or not. Because what is very clear, and what we all have been talking about, is that Ghana is not poor. And it looks as though it is the national cake that is residing in people's bedrooms, to put it, a bit more mildly in that sense. So we need to interrogate. And the point for me really is that the investigation must go beyond what is going on in the court currently. The OSP must step in. We need to interrogate the source of wealth, how she came to acquire these monies. Other people have even said that, well, it could have been that the husband gave her that $1 million plus all the extra bits, as part of their dealings. But again, it's very easy to prove that, because we should
Why? And the matter is reported to police, and the husband is involved as a co-complainant and identifies only his clothes and the suits as what has been stolen from him. He doesn't say that money is his.
So that's his bit. But let's even say that the husband even gave her the $1 million, right, as a gift, for argument's sake. It should be possible to prove that indeed that was a gift and the source of that money came indeed from the husband. This would all have to be established through some investigation beyond the current processes that are ongoing. That's why I think the OSP must step in, and we need to interrogate it. Because, however we slice and dice it, this is a major scandal and goes, to put the government and the so-called fight against corruption and other things in a very bad light, because we're just here analyzing these issues, and for a minister to have had that amount of money. And this is the same government or regime that has been talking about, don't keep your dollars, take your money, come and put it in the banking setup or in the banking system, and let's all be.
I understand that no bank branch in Ghana will keep this amount of money, that's just the dollars, overnight in their vault. They are not allowed.
So they will keep some, the rest may go to the central bank as part of their reconciliations, right?
So her bedroom is obviously bigger than a bank branch.
Exactly, but the big point really is, if you are the government and you're telling us that we should be patriotic, we should bring our dollars, put it in the banking setup, and all do our bit to help this ailing economy, then on what basis then do we then find this huge amount of money, or more or less stashed in one person's bedroom? And remember, this is only the amount that is reported to have been stolen. We don't even know, the quantum in a sense. So it tells me that, look, the monies would have been coming. And the big point you also raised about the whole politics and political economy, people go to see ministers at home. People go to see our big men at home. People carry envelopes. People carry all sorts of things, right, around. And these monies, you cannot take it into the normal banks and try to sort of, deposit it, because immediately it will trigger some of the KYC and YOCO and FIC and all of that. So the big point, or the other big point I want to sort of highlight really is all about how the politics of the country is run.
Right.
And the
Dr. Chiachampong, hold on for me. I want us to get into the second leg of the discussion after hearing your preliminary comments. And in the second leg, I want you guys to tell us what is wrong and what should be happening. What should be happening? Elevate the discussion into the whole political economy. CDD has told us how much it costs to fund, a parliamentary campaign, a presidential campaign, a humongous lot of money involved in all of that business. How Dr. Obeda Samuel in his book here also tells us how filthy the field has become. And we all remember the Dr. Obeda Samuel situation where he kept, 100 million Ghana cedis or so in on him, so to speak. And it became a matter for the court. And the court said, if you say a political party is a private entity, you are wrong. It's a public entity, so you can be prosecuted just as the same way it can happen. Right, so I will take a quick break and return for you guys to get into that. I also have the report on the commission of the inquiry into payment from public funds arising from judgment debts, Justice Yao Apao. The findings that he made and why he made a proposal for funding of political parties, why too much of our money is being wired into politics. He mentions the Nadeco from the Nkrumah era, how they were being used to, take 10% of contracts that are given to ministers to fund their politics. We're going into elections. Can we be sure that the people who will be going into these elections, all the money they are getting from whatever sources, they are putting them in the bank? Can they really put them in the bank? All right. So this is a woman whom we have known to have been in public office for the better part of her life. We have no history of her in private, business. From 2001, with President Kufuor coming to also be appointed aviation minister and coming through to all of this. Is that the reason we can't give her any excuse for holding so much money with her? She was the chairperson of the board of the Ghana Cocoa Processing Company, Obeda Samoa talks about how that entity is also a conduit for big corruption and so on. We'll be right back.
I've said it and I'll repeat it again. Those who are coming to this administration thinking that it's an avenue for making a lot of money are going to be disappointed. They better go to the private sector. That is where people make money, not in government.
Right. You're welcome back. You just heard President Akufo-Addo there. He had to repeat this on a number of occasions. And as you heard him himself, he said he had to repeat it. Now, there are calls on him that this doesn't look right. Even before investigations, you have every right as a president not to have waited for even this long. And the comparison is being made with him and John Mahama, whose deputy, minister only dreamt, was caught on tape dreaming of $1 million, and he sacked her straight away. Now, I come back and to also let you know that we are still trying. My producers tell me they keep trying to get the NPP representation on the show, but it does appear unless you have $1 million, you are not interested in this discussion if you belong to the NPP. Now, I want to come to Professor Epiagyei, and then we look at it from this perspective. So I mentioned, for example, we know the very famous case of the Republic versus Yebi and Avalifo. In 2000, the Supreme Court had to be invited into this matter where Obeda Samoa, chairman of the NDC, was in a situation keeping 100 million? I'm being told
current 10,000.
I'm being told to say that it was in the old CDs. But it was money, really good money at the time. And the issues came up. And you would remember how he himself spoke about how the NPP, began to vilify him about that situation. And he said that those who were accusing him were being hypocritical. They were being hypocritical. He said, quote, all political leaders kept money in their houses because in politics, you cannot function in emergencies on the basis of issuing checks. It is hypocritical for any official of any political party to hold a holier-than-thou attitude. That's to tell you, this is not exactly new. Then he cited an instance where Dan Boche, General Secretary of the NPP, was quoted in the media as saying that he had adopted the Sene constituency in the Brong-Ahafo region and promised each of the 105 polling stations a bicycle each. Recently, not too long ago, Freddie Blay promised to get a bus for each of the constituencies. Have we asked where that money was coming from? In Jerry Rawlings' circumstances, we had the issue where there was the allegation about, 5 million? He came to say it was 2-point-something million, is it? That he accepted from Abacha's government. This money, which bank will they have put it in? It's for political purposes, isn't it? So we have these situations all and again. How different do you see the situation where politicians keep money in their homes rather than put it in the bank? What should happen and why?
Samson, I think we need to understand the dynamics of politics, especially in Africa, where somebody has said the politicians are the comprador bourgeoisie. In other words, bourgeois without money in their pockets. So in that context, embezzlement, corruption, bribery, and so on become the strategic essence of governance. And so people will use their political positions to embezzle economic resources which in the end leads to the pauperization or what somebody will call poverty production. And I'm not saying reduction or alleviation, but production, where poverty is produced as a result of these processes. And then it leads to a situation where those who have been pauperized will become dependent on the ruler. And that leads to what the politicians or political scientists will call a neo-patrimonial society, where we are trying to promote a system of governance based on whether the parliamentary style or the presidential style and so on. But still embedded in that are some local monarchical practices which tend to create the impression that the president, the ministers, and so on need to be placed at a higher pedestal, and they are entitled to have some amount of money to which they then dish out to the people when they kowtow to them. So this kind of mentality has reigned and plagued our democracy. And that is where I think we should look at as a basis for looking at this matter. Now, you rightly said that Professor Dr. Obed-Asamoah tried to justify the practice, saying that they need money and you can always go to the bank and so on and so forth. And then he also referred to Dr. K. Buzia. During his time, that also happened when he also had some money stolen from his bedroom or his house. And so he tried to justify that. It is not unusual practice. That should then lead us to ask the question, how do we fund our politics? So that the way we fund the political system and the practices will determine how we end up being able to cure this defect which is plaguing the political system. So CDD has done a very good job on that. Of course, you talked about how much people need to fund political activities. And even more recently, the majority leader in parliament said that you need about, $4 million or so to organize and execute a political campaign for the office of a president. So the question is, how do we get this money? And we're supposed to have laws which are supposed to regulate campaign financing. To me, that is where the problem is. That is where it starts from. Because then people have to source for money from different avenues. And mind you, we are getting close to the political heats coming to the boil because next year we have elections. And already this year, primaries are being held for both presidential positions and parliamentary positions. So that needs to be settled by the end of the year for both parties. And then the real elections or the real deal starts next year. So people need money. So politicians are seeking for money. Those who want to influence politics from behind are ready to bargain and to give money to people who are interested creating this further cycle of godfatherism as we have in Nigeria. It is creeping into our politics. So in that situation, the Cecilia Dapaa thing is not something new, and it will remain as it is, so long as we are able to deal with the campaign financing issue. And also, so long as the asset declaration regime becomes a very weak mechanism in the fight against corruption. It is just there on paper.
All right.
And we also need to look at the effectiveness of YOCO. YOCO has played a very minimal role in trying to deal with such matters. And so we need to tackle the issues based on law, based on how we reform our political landscape. In some countries, they will say that the government will finance political parties depending on the percentage of votes you win, as a way of controlling campaign financing. So maybe we need to look at that issue as well.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is we need to consider, coming back to the Cecilia Dapaa incident, where the money came from and what the money was being used for. I think we can get to the bottom of this.
How do you want that? How do you want us to get to the bottom of it? How do we get to that?
Well, to get to that, I think we all mentioned some of the institutions that we have, OSP, SHRAJ, and IOCO, among others. I think that we need to, at least we can go back to SHRAJ, we go to SHRAJ and ask for the asset declaration documents of Mrs. Dapaa. That will clearly tell us what she brought into politics and how much she has earned as a politician.
Right. And the GRA, the Ghana Revenue Authority, should also be telling us if she has been filing her tax returns, where the disclosures of her incomes anywhere near these figures. That would be important to ask. That is if she has been filing. Now, if they were close to that, we want to know, was tax assessed and how much was the tax assessed? If some people too were complicit at the GRA, we should want to know. If you took this money from bank, which bank was it? Or took some of it from a bank, which bank was it? The officers of the bank, they had an obligation to alert the FIC about suspicious money. Did they do that? If they didn't do that, this bank too should also come in for some question, isn't it? If tax was not paid on this exact amount, GRA has a right to ask that the money that was not assessed, there should be an additional assessment so that she will pay. Which particular, tax office has been handling her file? It's very easy to know. The president can quickly ask of these things and they will be done. And she's obviously a high net worth individual for tax purposes. So obviously it will be handled in that unit of the GRA. The undisclosed or underreported income and the unpaid taxes. We need the money. If the money is genuine money, we need all the taxes paid on it. Now, I'm coming to you, Sam George, but let me come to Mary. Now, Mary, I had mentioned earlier about these developments in our country that we keep complaining, but we don't seem to do anything about them. Obeda Samoa writes on the issue of indiscipline and corruption in our polity. And in page 598 of his book, which I have him in my hand, The Political History of Ghana, 1950 to 2013, the experience of a non-conformist, Dr. Obed Yao Asamoah. Just a bit of it, indulge me. He says, government corruption reared its ugly head soon after the CPP came to power. We recall the Jibowu Commission probe of 1956, which cited A.Y.K. Jin, the managing director of the Cocoa Processing Company, CPC, for corruption and also alleged government complicity. We also recall the Akanya Commission report of 1964 on irregularities in the issues of import license and the Abraham Kumsen report of 1966 disclosing an array of civil evil causes of the shortages of commodities for which 35 GNTC officials were sacked just before Nkrumah was overthrown. We further recall the report of the governor before independence of payment in 1953 of a bribe by Kasajan, a construction company, to J.A. Brima, the Minister of Communications and Works. He was made to report to the police. A commission of inquiry headed by Sir Akukosa investigated this and other allegations made by Brima against members of government, including Dr. Nkrumah, most of which could not be established or proved. The opposition alleged corruption in the Cocoa Marketing Board, the Industrial Development Corporation, the Agricultural Development Corporation, the State Housing Corporation, among others. Then he comes to tell us about several other committees, GRJ, about Nkrumah's assets, the Nadeco Limited, which became a conduit for taking 10% of contract for purposes of funding political parties. He reminds us of the Venerable Samuel Kujeto, now in the Council of State, who in Parliament, spoke about monies in a similar fashion and got punished because he will not come, as it were, cooperate with the committee. He talks about STC, the CNTCI loan matter. He talks about the very recent matters also. So we have a long history of some of these things going on. Why do you think we can't succeed in checking these things and they continue to happen? Because no public officer should be keeping $1 million and 300 euros in their bedroom.
Certainly, or exactly so. And if you are chronicling, you perhaps also read about others. I remember the Huzia example and the bridge he went to commission, if you remember that. So this is not new at all. What you have said seeks to establish the fact that in our democracy, we have done things the wrong way, or the politicians have allowed the wrong things to happen, and the citizens have sat aloof to allow these to happen. It is also a result of a weak critical mass of the citizenry, and as well because of the powers that derive from the Constitution for the various appointees that we put in there. Let me say that this happens because of the weak political will to fight corruption. It also, again, happens because we do not have a very good political financing regime. And so if you have been part of this process, you would remember that in the past year or thereabout, civil society has come together through an initiative to begin to look at the cost of elections. The cost of elections, which then breeds some of these actions, ensuring that some political actors who are behind the scenes are pulling the strings.
Yeah, the CDD, the CDD's investigation, an important intervention. The CDD's investigation shows that presidential campaigns cost $100 million in Ghana, $100 million to have a successful presidential campaign. $100 million. You need 4 million Ghana cedis to be able to do a successful parliamentary campaign.
Exactly. So that is what I was coming to. So if we have monetized the process so much, and we have allowed this to go on harm, nobody gets punished for some of these actions. And now the reality is that the ordinary citizen has also come to appreciate the fact that they are not getting the fair share of the national cake. And so they are using this opportunity to also then bargain. So in some instances, you would realize that some communities are bargaining that if you do not get us this, we will not vote. Others are bargaining that if you do not give me a car, I will not vote. So the person who is interested in political office is now getting voted based on the amount of money they are able to make. And to crown it, the EC law on political party financing is not that clear, and the sanctioning around it is also very weak. But then we are talking about even actions to ensure that political parties are in compliance. This is weak. So this is why the drive for a political financing regime that takes away the issues around people giving people monies that cannot be accounted for, and so people would have to go and stash them in their houses. I'm not saying that is the case for the Honorable Minister, but just like you read copiously from the Honorable Obeda Samoa, this we have heard continues to happen because we have a regime that is weak, we have a regime that is not as robust as we should see it, and we do not see a lot of sanctions happening within the space. So going forward, we have looked at how do we get this change, that people who are contributing to the party's financing begin to do so, like it happens in other places. We were all here in this country sometime back when Obama, the former president of America, decided to contest for elections. And therein, his campaigning and the financing regime that they put out there. People were contributing $2 and the rest. And there is a cap on how much anybody can contribute. If this is not done, we continue to make, we would continue to talk. Civil society speaks about it. We would even get the political party financing regime maybe changed. But then if the will to stop this is not done, and if we are not sanctioning people such as what is happening now, then we would continue to have the situation not change. And so for me, I believe that as we have evolved as a country, one of the things that has come up for us that is good is the OSP Act, which seeks to cure the injustices which were perpetuated because the attorney generals or the general attorney generals would say they cannot prosecute their own. And within this, if you look at the OSP Act, his the regulation or the LI 2374 and the regulation 20, which talks about declaration of income and properties, which is very intrusive, I must say. It looks at politically exposed persons. It looks at all their interested parties, husbands, girlfriends, boyfriends, households, whoever has an interest in the person who is politically exposed is supposed to also be looked at when it comes to issues around such as what we are talking about today.
And a significant part of that, a significant part of that is that in that new law, as in the OSP, you know the difficulty that SHRAJ was the body to investigate corruption, abuse of office, and the rest of them. And the Supreme Court in the Richard Anane case said that to have, investigate abuse of office, you need an individual complainant. SHRAJ cannot say, I'm listening to radio, I have heard some publication, I want to follow it up. So the important thing for the OSP is that we have cured that problem by saying the OSP can on its own just get up by hearing of this information, move in and begin to check on the person's wealth and whether the money they have can be attributable as in the Constitution requires, whether it is attributable to their income, it is attributable to a gift they had, or it's a loan, or it's inheritance. Otherwise, it is wrongful, money wrongfully acquired, and the state must collect it.
Exactly. That is exactly where I was driving to. And for that, they do not need a complainant.
That's right.
And they could even use newspaper publications. So in this case, we have a copious newspaper publication, and I just checked the OSP site. You would see a lot of citizens making complaints, and that is the baseline for them. So the OSP can go into this. And if you look at the form that was developed per the regulation for people to then provide evidence, you would see that it will cure a lot of the mischief that continues to happen as a people. And we all know that the OSP has started doing some good work around prosecuting some people if it is important. We know in the past 3 months, he called a person who people thought he wouldn't have. So the OSP's independence to do this is very clear. Okay. However, Samson, we must also state that the role of the citizen in this regard is important, that whatever they see, if there is more information that is not available to the OSP or to the general public, which others have, they should make this available to support the process. Right. Again, we believe that as we go forward, the OSP should be allowed. So there shouldn't be any unseen voices from behind threatening them not to pursue what they are doing, because we know this happens. We know it continues to happen. The president should allow this process to go on. If he doesn't have the courage to do the right thing, we are very confident that the OSP would take this up.
What do you mean? What do you mean by if he doesn't have the courage to do the right thing? What right thing are you?
Do the right thing by asking the lady to step aside and let the independent investigation proceed. If he doesn't have that courage, perhaps because
when Manasseh investigated the contracts for sale, ABAJ, the Public Procurement Authority, you drew the president's attention, and without any delay, he made him step aside. And after Shraj was done with its work, he sacked him. And then you proceeded with a second petition to have all the board members, including himself, also investigated. So the president has a record that you will not say is that bad, isn't it?
In one instance, in many more of the instances which you can also speak to, there have been instances where the president has cleared people who were being investigated because another institution has investigated them without any evidence. There have been instances where we have asked, and in the case of the health minister, when the Sputnik V issues came, the COVID audits and others, there have been so many instances where the president has, excuse me to say, sat aloof or not listened or heeded the call of civil society and the citizenry when it comes to some of these things. But then this is so glaring, this is so blatant. Anybody having $1 million in their house, that $1 million getting missing and they not even realizing it. Something for me, if 1,000 cedis gets missing from my house, perhaps I will know. I don't even have it there, let alone to say that it is going to happen. But then to end something, I would like to say that in most of these instances, when it comes to investigations, you mentioned Shraj, you mentioned Yoko, you mentioned FIC. The issue of interagency collaboration is usually very weak. In this instance, we have clarity. Shraj went to court and we know what happened in the instance you mentioned. Let us see some very clear collaboration happening. And even the GRA comes to play in this instance. So the FIC, Yoko, Shraj, and the OSC should help each other to ensure that this is done expeditiously and done very well. And we believe that in their strengths or in the collective of their strengths, they would be able to do a lot more for this country.
Thank you very much. I know my last, and I will need a very brief from you. We're looking at the holistic picture, and I just spoke about the Justice Dapaa's report on inordinate judgment debts, which we all know, we know the facts, but sometimes we play the ostrich. The politicians cook these judgment debts, and they go and take huge amounts of monies in millions and of dollars and euros just to oil their campaign machines. They fleece the country, and the Judgment Debt Commissioner is a bit hesitant, but gives you certain indications and says that we must look at a political party funding bill to check some of this. I will have the two. I'll have Sam George and Dr. Tio Echampon look at that. But my question to you is that you have been on the backs of government for the need to pass the Conduct of Public Officers Bill. I remember many, many years ago, it's over a decade now, they can't seem to pass it because the asset declaration one we have now, we all know it's not effective. Occupy Ghana has been writing to the presidency and insisting that the new law should be passed and made effective, more particularly for purposes of verification of the assets declared. I remember when you organized a meeting about 6 years ago, your contention was that even in the Rawlings regime, you declare the assets and it is verified. There's publicity. It is gazetted, so all members of the public can see. But in our now democracy, better than the Rawlings PNDC regime, you don't do the verification process, and there's no publication. Now, the IMF has made this an important condition for what we are getting, and the government says it is committed to passing it. How soon do you think this will be passed?
Something we all live to see, but this is one advocacy we would not let down, because this law, if in this current state, in fact, if it's passed, does not depart too much from what exists when it comes to the issues around assets declaration. And so it is a good thing that it was not passed in the last parliament, because it went through an extensive process. But then when it comes to issues of verification and also publication, this is not done. And when you look at the best practice, OECD, and also the UNCAC, and when you look at even the Convention on Preventing Corruption and Combating Corruption, the AU, the benchmark, they want us to have robust legislation. And these include verification and publication, and also monitoring of such assets. Unfortunately, that is not what the Cocoa Bill is giving us. So now that someone else is keeping us in line, I believe then the discussion would again then come up so that we look at the issues around robustness. And robustness would only be when we have verification. If people just dump their assets and we do not verify them, that is not enough. And the Auditor General currently tells us that they look at the assets. So when assets are declared, they open them and look at them. What we need to see is the publication of the assets. And we say so because those who put themselves up for public office have no business wanting to have secret dealings and wanting to keep some things about themselves private.
All right.
We know they have their private lives, but in the instances where you can acquire wealth and we do not know where those are coming from, it is a matter of agency that such people, both their wealth and their liabilities, are declared and published for the good people of Ghana to know. And so it is heartwarming that the IMF has done this, because we know for sure that the government indicated through cabinet that they were not going to pay attention to this bill. So we are happy that at least our advocacy, which didn't make sense to government, has made sense to the IMF, which is now calling them to attention.
There must be verification and publication, or otherwise we don't have
without which we believe the bill in its current state, even though it
all right. Thank you very much, Mary. Let me come to Sam George here. So I'm getting a lot of messages from well-meaning Ghanaians, and they are saying, why are we trying to kid with the woman and sort of as if an attempt to protect her somewhat? And, you know, a distinguished statesman's view is that, like I mentioned earlier, she's been known to be in public life. So we shouldn't make any excuses for her. In 2001, she was appointed the chairperson of the board of Cocoa Processing Company. She had been special assistant to President Kufuor. She was moved from the board in 2005 and made the deputy minister for water resources, works and housing. So she's been living on your funds as a public people. So please pay attention. In 2007, she was made a substantive minister to the end of the Kufuor administration in 2008. So we know, of course, she's been contesting elections in Bantama and winning until, is it Kokofu? Is it he unseated her or so? And she's presently an important minister. In 2017, President Kufuor nominated her for the position of Minister of Aviation. President Kufuor, Minister of Aviation. So she's been around and living on public funds. What difference does that make?
It makes a whole world of difference. And for me, that's why I get the context in the historical facts you brought to bear.
Okay.
But that doesn't, for me, change the crux of what the conversation is today. The conversation today is, it was bad in the past. We have changed governments for that reason. We had a presidential candidate who was voted massively into office on the back of a promise that if you want to make money, don't come into my government, stay in the private sector. On the back of a promise that said we were sitting on money, or the previous government was sitting on money and the people of Ghana were hungry. On the back of a man who said he was not corrupt, look at my age, I have achieved, I don't need to come and steal money, we have the men and all our people are wealthy. That was the story that was sold to Ghanaians. Now, we sit in a government where we see this. And you see, let's not kid ourselves. Under this administration, this is not the first time this is happening. There were allegations. This one has gone to court and is proven because of court. But there were allegations that when the deputy chief of staff's house got burnt, the current minister for lands and natural resources, Abu Jinapo, there were issues of monies that were stolen and the fire was a cover-up, allegations. Then there was the allegation of the Western Regional Minister, Kwabena Oshidako, that his driver ran away with 17 million Ghana cedis to Ivory Coast. That was just last year. So this is not the first of its kind under the Akufo-Addo administration.
Except that all of these have been denied.
Fantastic. In this instance, for whatever reason, the minister decides to go to court.
But you forget one thing, and it's important I bring it in also here. Eugene Ahen's wife decided there was to be a divorce or something like that. And then suddenly,
the assets she was trying to
of course, all of these things have been denied. But someone whose background was known, he was a non-entity, so to speak. And within a very short time, being a communication director at the presidency, all of this was attributed to her. And a lot has been now hush-hushed, so on.
Yeah, so you see, it shows you that there is a certain culture. And maybe people are asking, why would the minister go if it was ill-gotten wealth? Maybe it's just the arrogance of power. And the fact that she felt, well, this could fly under the radar and I could just teach these house helps a lesson. It is not to say that legitimizes the money, because legitimacy of the money can only be established if you can show us the earnings or the inheritance and the appropriate tax paid on it. And given the resume of the minister that you have read to us, there is no reference to him in private practice to earn that kind of money. People have tried to bring in her husband. I think that we've established with the...
He's an architect. He's said to be wealthy.
The question
and
is,
we also told that her late
us,
mother was a queen in Asanteman.
Can anybody show us the last project the husband as an architect was involved in? What was the value of the project?
Well, the money is for her. It's not for her husband.
Absolutely. So that argument is moot. If it is her late mother who bequeathed her gold bars, gifts, where's the gift tax? Where is the chain of custody? I mean, and look, even with jewelry, you ought to take it, the safe thing to do would be to take it to a bank for safekeeping and pay for it and pay for the services of the bank. So, look, where we sit now is that we have a president who promised us one thing. But like I've always said, this government has been soundbite presidency because it's about the soundbites, the things that make the news, but they don't walk the talk. And that is where the problem of the Ghanaian people are. That at this point in time, something where we are at the lowest ebb of our economic space, like in the economic space, we are at the lowest. We have to beg to borrow. We have to beg to be considered to qualify to borrow. That's how insolvent we are. And then you have individuals holding this wealth. And in my earlier submission, I said, this is just your Bola minister. There are other people in government or associated to government that we've heard rumors of the kinds of things that they do. Don't forget that Madam Cecilia Dapaa's name has never come in the radar of issues around corruption in this government. And then we find this. So those who there are proven cases of corruption that have been cleaned and whitewashed by the president, by investigations, either by investigative journalists or by whistleblowers, either ex-spouses and all, that have been whitewashed by the president, you can then imagine what they are holding. And you then begin to ask yourself, why the cedi is falling and the economy cannot hold? Why the fundamentals are weak and the exchange rate is exposing us? Is because there's very people in government who ought to know better, are rather hoarding the dollar. And you see, it doesn't surprise me. And Samson, if you have friends in government, anybody who knows any top MPP person knows that when they want to do adoye and they want to dash you money, they don't dash you cedi. They dash you dollar. They dash you FX. Because that is what they spend. That is what they carry around. And that is the problem of our country. That the very people who are supposed to help us build the banking system and clean up the mess are actually the mess that we need to clean up. And for me...
What do you expect GRA and all of these entities to be doing, and how swiftly should all be done? You are already disappointed that over 48 hours, the president is mute.
As for the president, I have no hope in him. I mean, the president is a lost case when it comes to fighting corruption. The president can't fight corruption. The president can't sack her. Because the president would, in sacking her, the president will be opening himself up. Because, I mean, people will begin to talk. So the president can't touch her. But I expect the OSP to begin to show us that he's independent and will work on this. The GRA will try to, but you know the GRA themselves, over 2 weeks ago, I brought a Safari Tech case against them. They were supposed to respond to public accounts on Wednesday. They have failed to. Because the GRA itself is rotten. So how does the GRA even handle itself? But this matter is one that the special prosecutor, he needs no complaint. We should have seen a letter by now inviting the woman for questioning. I don't understand why the OSP has not done that
the
up
woman
till
says
now.
there are some inconsistencies and she will clear them in due course.
That is fanciful English that has been employed as PR spin that we will not buy. Look, my 8-year-old son will not buy this. So nobody should stop the spin. The best thing to do, the honorable thing to do, if she had any honor left, would be to first and foremost resign. And then that statement should be saying that she is willing to cooperate with law enforcement authorities who are willing to investigate her.
Is it your expectation that in the process...
If the money is legitimate, she would subject herself to investigation to establish her innocence.
Is it your expectation that in the process, all these cars and houses that have been confiscated from the house helps that stole them will become property of the state?
They ought to be property of the state at this point in time because, you see, when a thief steals from a thief, and I'm not calling anybody a thief here, because until anybody is proven guilty, everybody is presumed innocent. That's the position of our law. But I'm just saying that the also general presumption is when a thief steals from a thief, God doesn't get offended. And so thief man, God no the vex. So at this point in time, if the value, if we cannot authenticate that the source of the funds that were stolen to acquire those items are not state funds, the state should confiscate them until the owner is able to establish legitimacy of ownership.
Right. I'm going to Dr. Theo Champong, and you see, it's not lost on me that it is important to take this beyond this, and that's why I refer to all of these things, and I've spent my time reading some of them again. But, Sam George, the CDD did a checks and says you need $100 million, to be able to do a campaign that can win you the presidency.
Absolutely.
Where do the politicians get this money? It says you need 4 million Ghana cedis to win as an MP.
Sometimes even more,
including nurturing the constituency.
This would be an average.
We see all the things that are done. So tell me, where do you get that money? Let me put you on the spot. Where do you get that money?
But I've said this before on a previous engagement on your platform, that we have a what word did I use? We have a supposed fight against corruption, because you see, if the populace, but Mary alluded to the fact succinctly that the populace feel that the electoral cycle is the only time where they can actually get a share of the national cake, because the political class have created a certain gulf between ourselves and the populace, and we have arrogated to ourselves the largesse of state, and so you have corrupt businessmen and corrupt business interests that will corrupt politicians, fund them, but that money doesn't necessarily sit with politicians. It has to trickle down for you to then get office, and then so it's an endless cycle. You just have to have been in Asin North to have seen.
Of course, I didn't have to be there. I saw some of the footage.
Absolutely.
And look, what a lame excuse one of these guys in the MPP was giving when they were caught on camera giving money to the people. And he said they come from a long distance and they need to give them money. I said, so come on.
Asin North is clear example of why money will be hoarded.
The Electoral Commission does not put your polling station far away from where you live.
So you know something. If you look at the way the monies have been reported in the case, you then realize that what the minister apparently may be doing, and that's my own deduction, I'm not saying that that's factual, is building a storehouse for her tomorrow and her children, and then also building the one for political expediency. So there is the millions of cedis That's the one you give in Asi North. Because Asi North, I didn't see dollars. But then the dollars will be used to buy up a future for children. But you see, the point is,
and I understand that the real estate business is where a lot of the money
the real estate
that the politicians
business,
get
real estate business in Ghana is money laundering. If our authorities want to deal with it, they will deal with it. The cost of real estate in Ghana is not justifiable by any stretch. You keep seeing all these new high-rise buildings going up and they are selling them for $500,000, $1 million, and they keep buying amongst themselves. So I have dirty money to clean. I put up a real estate property. You also have dirty money. You come and buy the property from me. Then automatically your money becomes clean. Then tomorrow you also start building your own. Then I come back and buy. And we are just cleaning the money. Okay. And we are sitting here.
Let me go to, I didn't really get an answer directly to my question I asked you. But you didn't answer that. I asked, how are you going to prosecute your campaign when you believe that you need more than 4 million Ghana cedis?
The Lord will provide.
Dr. Thierry Champon. So look, this is the joke. And how do you think we can check these things? And I've taken us back to far away before CPP, after CPP. CPP began, and there were market women who were contributing fiscal money to help Nkrumah, win elections. Then after he won elections, later on, we knew how things had become. And so it's no more market women thing. This 10% on the contract, we know, we keep saying proverbial, but it's a thing, it is there. People, contractors who are doing contract today, they are paying. And they are paying to individual pockets. And parties are keeping money. Parties in government, more particularly, know they are so wealthy. Just yesterday, they couldn't organize a congress. Once they come into office, they are able to organize a flamboyant, congress with all their people coming from all over the place. So we know these things. What is happening to us as a country? Why can't we fight this?
I feel you, Samson. It's good that we've got the historical antecedents from Nkrumah to Kobwe Duse, and all the way through. Remember the famous Haruna Iseku case, Kufuor time with the 10%, kickback and all. But I think you asked Sam also an interesting question.
And Theo, just hold on just a second for me. Let me tell you this, that a government loses power, and contractors have already paid 10% on the contracts they got. The new government that comes in will call the contractors to renegotiate. And in the sort of renegotiation, you must promise to give them another kickback. So if you don't pay extra, kickback, they won't fund your contract. This is what we have in this country.
Yeah, we are all dancing around the bush. And it was quite interesting when you asked me also the question about how does he fund his campaign as an MP, and we didn't really get a straightforward.
He won't answer it.
To that. So, okay, we've all diagnosed the problem, but none of us are really speaking to how to fix it.
Right.
Because we know that, yes, the campaign is financed by political entrepreneurs, businessmen that would give you money, buy motorbikes, buy cars, you name it, in expectation that when you come into power, you're going to get, they're going to get something out of that. So as a result, you see a lot of dodgy money in the system. And one of the avenues that we've talked about is, this whole real estate thing. There's a lot of, quote unquote, washing that is happening within that space. So the issue of campaign financing, absolutely important, but I don't think both of the two parties are really committed to fighting it. I don't get the sense that there's a real interest deep down to address it, because if there were, we wouldn't be in this issue. And even if there were, there are other constitutional means to sort of, check some of these issues or constitutional reform. So, for example, one of the arguments that's been made is instead of this first past the post electoral system, why don't we have proportional representation and give room for some of the smaller parties, depending on your share of the national vote, to get a certain proportion, a percentage of the seats in parliament? Because that, in a way, mitigates or reduces the tendency for people to corrupt these people. There's also the big issue of the asset declaration, because like we've all indicated, there is these monies that are paid as kickbacks, etc., and they are never in the official financial system. These monies are not put in a bank. It's monies that will be sitting under people's, pillows and bedrooms and you name it. In that regard, and I think the conduct of the Public Officers Act, the new one, and one which the IMF is pushing for as part of the conditionalities that Ghana has got to meet under the new program, is very important, because when you read that IMF document on page 22 or paragraph 43, it says, there's a quote there, that the performance in government effectiveness, regulatory quality, and control of corruption, very important, have deteriorated over the last 10 years. That is the reality that we're dealing with. So part of the solution is through this new conduct of Public Officers Act, and that would help address some of the weaknesses that we have in the existing asset declaration regime. As part of that, there's also even meant to be a whole diagnostic assessment of, how corruption plays out in the broader governance architecture of the country. The last point I want to make is the issue of institutional effectiveness and institutional collaboration. Mary talked about that, but far often you get many of our regulatory investigative bodies sometimes working in silos, and you don't get those, information sharing, cross ideas being, fertilized across the board. And that's something that we've got to look at in a bit of addressing some of the gaps in there. But I think that the big thing is really about campaign financing. And I don't get the impression that both of our two parties are really committed to fighting that in the country.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm being told that the OSP has been petitioned on this case. I suppose then that will be the Crusaders Against Corruption, a body. Well, the OSP doesn't actually need your petition. It is SHRAJ that will need a petition to be able to go into it. Somebody says elsewhere, the petitions would have been in the thousands at all of these places. Yes, you live in Ghana where some people have selected a group of people and are expecting that they will be the only ones who will be talking about everything and anything when it happens. But they just sit there quietly and watching. They won't do anything about it. Some of your messages here. And Prof, before I take a break and return to the next issue, I'll come to you if you have any final comments to make on this matter. Samuel Adler says, even the ministers constituting the government don't trust the government strategy and the strategists. They therefore keep their hard money under their bed. A thing that used to happen before the 90s. For those saying she had worked for so long, I guess she was paid on the tabletop. Harisu Lamini says, I just hope this issue will not be politicized to confuse us. An investigation really needs to commence. $1 million, if genuinely obtained, I don't think there is a problem, but otherwise, laws must work. The house helps. Case is purely criminal, and so the laws have to work. Well, the house helps are those who are helping you to discover this, whether they did wrong or not. Colin Stetter said, again, I tell you, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. Matthew 19:24. If a minister of state keeps this money in her house, it raises a lot of questions. Miles Kale says, nothing positive is going to come out of this because the laws of the land protect them. So let me just look for my bed and sleep, because if we are really serious, country, by now she would be sacked from her office. But no. Well, Miles, the thing is that you don't go to sleep. You voted the president. The president is there to execute your power. The president doesn't have a power that you didn't give them. The members of parliament, all of them, the people in government, they are wielding a power the Constitution says is yours. So don't sit down quiet as a citizen and say, go check my somewhere. That's a certain Ghanaian attitude, which is bad. Someone has sent a message, say, elsewhere, the presidency would have been surrounded this morning with a lot of demonstrators, and the president would have acted. Joe Jr. says, a by-day laborer on a site. As a by-day laborer on a site, I visited, a by-day laborer on a site I visited told me someone just stole 7,500 from his room. I was shell-shocked. People have a lot stashed somewhere. This woman holds a public position, which is why it's loud. People have a lot inside. This by-day laborer is entitled to keep his money, please. Small 7,000. Anwar Sadat, I even doubt if Bank of Ghana can secure $1 million from their reserve immediately. Manche, Ghana, says, in a serious country where the leader is accountable to the people, she will be investigated and allow the process to work. Kwame Yeboah, these same corrupt politicians are begging us to accept an amount of 1 cedi 20 pesos as feeding per kid in our schools. Okay, so I can understand. I've got a lot more of your messages. I will share them right away. Let me hear if Prof has any final comments as to how this should be dealt with, as if anybody had an option to ensure that this matter was looked into. Hello, Prof.
Yes, I think that we certainly need to look at the assets declaration regime.
Right.
For me, it's very important. And we did some work on that, hoping that you could easily access a copy and to be able to tell what is happening. So the situation where Shraj has been prevented from initiating cases on its own, this also needs to be addressed so that in this case, they can easily take up the matter and then resort to the assets declaration regime and see what is going on. In any case, there will certainly be a complaint to be launched before Shraj so that we'll get to start from there. Having said that, I also want to say that there are two theories that we can use to assess, to determine why the money is stashed in Madam Cecilia Dapaa's home. One is to prepare for campaigning next year. The other could be that the party in power is thinking that it's likely to lose the elections. Therefore, people are finding ways to stash money wherever they want to stash it as much as they can, so that if they are no more in political power, there can be something they can
or maybe she's actually holding the money for the party, it's not hers.
Exactly, yes. So that could be the case. And also need to take into account the fact that nowadays it's a bit difficult to send money abroad and stash it in foreign banks. Even if you can do that, there's some sort of transparency processes going on, which could easily, more easily expose you. So we have situations where some of Abacha's money have been returned to Nigeria and so on. So people are a little more cautious about sending money abroad. And so they are investing this into real estate in the country, especially at this moment where they know that the assets declaration regime is weak. And then there was this question about some of these agencies acting in silos, as Mary Ada rightly pointed out. And it's also deliberate, so as not to get it to the bottom of some of these matters. I personally took leave to work on the Ghana case tracking system. And it was a system that was supposed to, try to bridge these gaps and to allow the agencies, especially Legal Aid Commission, the Ghana Police, Attorney General's Office, the courts and so on, to work more collaboratively together to be able to ensure delivery of criminal justice in a more expeditious manner. But after a few years after the project was completed, it has more or less become a white elephant. And so if we really want to fight corruption, we need to look at these factors. And it's also interesting that Mr. George did not respond to your question. I think it's very important because in one way or the other, it comes down to corruption. It comes down to campaign financing issues, and we know how politicians take advantage of such situation. And it leads to that kind of unfortunate collaboration between criminals and politicians, which leads to a situation where it becomes difficult to identify or to draw the line between who is a criminal and who is a politician.
All right.
It's very unfortunate for our political dispensation.
Okay.
Thank you.
One of my producers tells me that she's not the party's accountant. Why would she keep the party's money? So you know what I'm doing? If the party people and the government and the people in government sincerely believe that she's on her own, they should start speaking up just like any other Ghanaian. Their silence is deafening. Their silence is too loud, really. That's what I want to say. If there is no fear of any things that will happen, those people must speak up. They should come up and say, she's a member. We don't think what she did is appropriate. We want these investigations to go on. The president must issue a statement. Actually, the president should not be issuing statements. He should just be telling us what he has done. And many people are asking, why do you think people are just saying OSP, and Iyoko? I don't know what that means, really.
You don't know?
No, I have no idea.
Who heads Iyoko? That's the answer to the question.
Oh,
the current head of Iyoko is Mamiti Wado. And we remember when A+ made corruption allegations against the 2 deputy chiefs of staff.
Oh, the popular clearing agent.
The clearing agents thing.
Okay.
So you send it back to Iyoko today, you may most likely have a clearing agent thing done there. And that's why people are hoping that OSP will toe a different line. But I'm surprised, Samson, that people say I didn't answer the question. I answered the question.
You did?
I did.
I didn't hear your answer.
No, and I can repeat it again so that it's clear. I stated clearly that.
Repeat. I'm listening.
I stated clearly that for me, I won't spend 4 million Ghana cedis. I'm loved by the people of Ningo Pram Pram. So I don't need to spend 4 million Ghana cedis. But clearly, I've stated that there are always business interests who would want to support. You go around to try and raise funds. You go to people to raise funds. The question is, are you minded by your integrity on where you go to for money and the strings attached to that money? Because don't forget, there is no free lunch in Freetown.
And same applies to you when you take the money from them.
Oh, absolutely.
Really? Okay.
But like I said, I'm loved by the people of Ningo Pram Pram. And let me say a very big thank you to them for the love they showed to me. I don't need to spend 4 million Ghana cedis.
Okay, so we'll go to the next issue, but I can assure you the tons of messages you are bringing on this issue, we'll be reading them even though we'll be discussing some other issues. Most Ghanaians are principleless. You are defending this even in the rich countries where citizens live good. This would be a serious issue that will lead to her arrest, investigation, and if possible, prosecution. Imagine the implication of her conduct on the cedi crisis. And clearly, she hoarded the money during the apex of the cedi crisis. Is that what you expect from your minister, who is supposed to be patriotic? Sick country. Alhaji Suleiman sent in that one. I told you there are many messages like this, and people are saying, have I heard what Boache Jako has been saying about why he got into trouble with the Ameri power plant? We should read. It's not too far away. The people are making confessions about how they are stealing your money. We'll be right back. This is Newsfile.